we will be investigating the quadratic formula. The standard form of a quadratic equation is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and the constants are a, b, and c, and the variables are y and x. We will be using the quadratic formula to solve for x, and it's important to note that we need the quadratic equation in this format where all of the terms or variables of x are on one side of the equation. So the quadratic formula, again looking at it as ax squared plus bx plus c, when we are looking for solutions, we set it equal to 0. Then we can find what x equals. And x equals the opposite of b, or negative b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. And a, b, and c, again, come from our quadratic equation. This is an important formula to keep in the back of your mind. Whether solving by factoring or solving by the quadratic formula is up to you, but we will see some instances it'll be easier to solve by factoring and some by the quadratic formula. Either instance will give us the same answer. For example, if we're looking at x squared plus 9x plus 14 equals 0, we can factor this and say that x plus 7 times x plus 2 equals 0. That means that x plus 7 must equal 0, or x plus 2 must equal 0. So x equals a negative 7, or x equals a negative 2. We can also use the quadratic formula, where a equals 1, notice our leading coefficient of x squared is 1, b equals 9, and c equals 14. So using the quadratic formula, we have x equals the opposite of b, negative 9, plus or minus the square root of b squared, or 9 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 14. All of this is being divided by 2 times our a value of 1. We can simplify what's under the square root. Under the square root, we have 9 squared, which is 81, minus 4 times 1 times 14, which is 56, or the square root of 25. So now we see that x equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 25, all divided by 2. Well, we know that the square root of 25 is 5, meaning that x equals negative 9 plus or minus 5 divided by 2. There are two solutions in this. The first solution is x equals negative 9 plus 5 divided by 2. And negative 9 plus 5 is a negative 4. Divide that by 2 is a negative 2. Our second solution is x equals negative 9. Now we will take the minus of the plus or minus, 5 divided by 2. Negative 9 minus 5 is a negative 14. Divided by 2 is a negative 7. So in both instances, we found that x could equal a negative 7 or a negative 2. The quadratic formula might come in handy in this instance. We have a negative x squared minus 2x equals a negative 5. Remember, we always need this to be set equal to 0. So I'm going to rewrite this as a negative x squared minus 2x plus 5 equals 0. Now I can find what my a, b, and c values are, which is a negative 1, b equals a negative 2, and c equals 5. Now, using my quadratic formula, I have the opposite of b, which is 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, just negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is a negative 1, times c, which is positive 5. All of this divided by 2a, or 2 times a negative 1. After simplifying this, I find out that x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 20, all divided by a negative 2. Or x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 24 divided by 2. In this instance, the square root of 24 is not easily solved, and so we could not factor this one as easily as we did other equations. X equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 2 is an acceptable answer, but not yet completely simplified, because we can recognize the square root of 24 as the square root of 4 times 6. Or in other words, we would have 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 times the square root of 6, all divided by 2. 24, the square root of 4 times 6 would be 2 root 6. With this in mind now, we can factor a 2 out of our numerator, leaving 1 plus or minus the square root of 6, all divided by 2. And now those 2's divide away, leaving a final answer of 1 plus or minus the square root of 6. And remember, these are what x equals. So there's two answers, 1 plus the square root of 6 and 1 minus the square root of 6. And if we actually wanted to calculate this out, the two approximations for this would be a negative 3.45 or a positive 1.45. So you can take the square root of 6 and find those approximations, but oftentimes we leave it in this format.